Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here with all of you. Thanks for taking the time. My name is Mahesh Ramanujam, President and CEO of the Global Network for Zero, which I co-founded in 2021 to empower people and organizations to accelerate the journey to a zero emissions world. And many of you know me from my time leading the US Green Building Council. It was from that position, growing the lead brand globally, where I witnessed tremendous leadership from professionals across Latin America, and I should say friends, and the regional GBCs. It's great to see so many familiar faces here. And it is always a special moment for me whenever I'm speaking to the Latin American friends. So thank you so much for your friendship and your continued partnership. Today, I won't go into the why of green building or sustainability, as you already know that. Today, I want to focus on the next frontier of building design leadership, not just aspirationally, but in practical, actionable terms. So here is where we stand with net zero today. Only 0.023% of buildings globally are net zero. Net zero buildings are projected to grow 29% annually through 2027. But still, we are facing a 70% shortfall in the number of low carbon buildings needed, and investor and tenant demand for this is rising fast. So the next frontier is designing, constructing, and retrofitting buildings to achieve net zero across scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. So in today's session, we'll explore how Latin America can lead, tools GNFZ offers to accelerate this transition, and case studies from companies already making the leap. Today, I'm also pleased to be joined by my friend Hector Miranda Plaza, who will share his local insights on the potential for the region, and my colleague Sri Ranjani Srinivasan, who will also demo our net zero certification platform. So I'm so excited about sharing all of this with you today. Of course, please use the chat for any questions that you have. And hopefully at the end of the session, we'll have enough time for a good Q&A. And we welcome your dialogue. Now let's jump in. Buildings are at the center of global emissions conversation, especially in Latin America. We have less than 5 years until the Paris Agreement deadlines, and most net zero pledges are behind schedule. But the good news is that the UN says limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius is still technically possible. That is good news. So we must accelerate on all fronts. So Latin America is uniquely positioned to lead. Every country in the region has ratified the Paris Agreement, and many, including Mexico, Brazil, Costa Rica, Colombia, and Chile, have recently set more rigorous goals. For example, in Mexico, the NDC has been updated from 22% to 35%, and Brazil has set new interim deadlines, committing to a 37% reduction by 2025 and 50% reduction by 2030, basically halving the emissions by 2030. Chile's 2022 Climate Act mandates net zero by 2050. And with buildings responsible for nearly 25% of energy use and 7% of emissions, Chile's NDC aims for all new public buildings to be net zero energy by 2030. That is just 5 years from now, and all new buildings to be net zero by 2050. Now, this is perfect progress, and the progress is happening. Major markets across Latin America are embracing the design, construction, and operation of high-performance green buildings, and Mexico and Brazil rank among the top 10 countries globally for green buildings. All of this is great news and good news for the Latin American friends. Now, in the transition to net zero, Latin America also has a clean energy edge. Fossil fuels make up about 2/3 of the region's energy mix, lower than 80% of global average. Thanks to a 60% share of renewables in electricity generation, these numbers are possible. Costa Rica and Paraguay run almost entirely on renewable energy. Now, I'd like to take a few minutes to introduce GNFZ, Global Network for Zero, and our premier net zero certification platform designed to support your projects with an incremental, affordable, and GHG protocol-based approach. And GNFZ, we founded GNFZ in 2021 to remove barriers to building decarbonization. We offer net zero certification programs for buildings, portfolios, businesses. I would like to even say products, communities, cities, and much more, because decarbonization cannot happen in silos. So we have created a global network for consultants and experts, and we are hoping to establish this supportive ecosystem with your help to help businesses decarbonize their assets to meet the Paris Agreement goals. Our approach is grounded in years of market insight from developers, architects, engineers, and projects, and even business leaders that are certified to lead and other leading systems, and is designed to simplify net zero implementation. Now, in my experience, and of course, along with Sarah, and many of you have walk with me in this particular journey, is that the biggest issues we have noticed are in planning and implementation. Buildings lack credible net zero transition plans, and implementation progress has been extremely slow. The core issue is lack of ROI data, return on investment data, and also return on impact data to make the business case for net zero. And that's what GNFZ was found to resolve and solve by removing planning and implementation barriers, by taking an incremental approach to certification and making the process transparent, data-driven, and most importantly, accessible. GNFZ's Net Zero certification for buildings provides a framework to demonstrate that new and existing buildings are designed, constructed, and operated to net zero by removing Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 emissions so that we can generate more energy than we consume, save more water than they use, reduce waste, and positively impact the physical, mental, and social health of its occupants. It's simple as that. So we have kept it very simple. We offer 4 categories with 3 certifications under each emissions, which is where Scope 1 and 2, 3 comes into play. We define net zero emissions as a building balancing its Scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions with equivalent emissions removed or offset. So you may be asking yourself, how do I calculate this? So Sri Ranjani will go over this in more depth when she gets to the demo part. But for Scope 1, we look at fuel sources and their consumptions, the consumption of refrigerants, and the fuel consumption of vehicles owned or controlled by the reporting organizations such as fleet and utility vehicles. For Scope 2, we look at a building's annual consumption from these sources. And for Scope 3, we look at indirect downstream activities, including the 15 categories outlined here, which are basically categories from the greenhouse gas protocol. Our next category is energy, which impacts Scope 1 and 2. So we define net zero energy as a building generating renewable energy on-site or off-site equal to its annual energy consumption, resulting in the mitigation of Scope 1 and 2 emissions and zero net energy drawn from the grid. And the last 2 categories impact things beyond scope emissions. Net zero water is defined as building balancing its total water consumption with an equivalent amount of water replenished on-site or through alternative sources. And net zero waste is defined as a building that aims to eliminate waste generation by maximizing recycling, composting, and other diversion strategies to achieve zero waste sent to the landfill. So we offer these following certifications for buildings across these categories. First certification is net zero design certification. Second is net zero construction certification. And last but not the least, net zero operation certification offered to buildings that are operational and given to projects that have achieved net zero. Now, to sum up what makes us unique, our certification is built on the GHG protocol, a widely used mechanism to measure Scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. This means our certification is based on pure accounting and data, and unlike traditional certification where emissions data may be obscured, GNFZ brings quantification of emissions reduced to the forefront. This enables clients to access, quantify, and extract emissions data for compliance with initiatives such as SBTi. Of course, we try to support many programs that's out there, be it a ESG program, be it a disclosure program, or for that matter, even the UN SDG goals. We also have no prerequisites. That's the good part. We meet every building where they are. So any building, regardless of type, location, or sustainability status, can pursue and achieve GNFZ's certifications. I call this strategy as a 0 to 0 strategy. You go from nothing to something. And if you're a wonderful LEED Platinum building, you can actually get to zero by closing the gap. So by providing a customized roadmap and implementation support, we are empowering organizations to start anywhere and eventually end at zero. We are also focused purely on emissions, not point accumulation. This empowers asset owners and project teams to implement the most cost-effective ways to cut emissions without chasing strategies that sometimes don't translate into emissions reductions. As a result, clients can optimize their investments, increase efficiency, and reach their targets even faster. For companies with limited exposure to net zero initiatives, especially small to medium enterprises, GNFZ ensures access to best-in-class practice, making net zero goals achievable for individuals and organizations for all sizes. Of course, traditional certification programs often involve cumbersome documentation and multiple certification layers. For example, to achieve LEED Zero, one must first complete a full LEED certification. You cannot get to LEED Zero without having a LEED certification. That's a barrier. Now, we hope GNFC eliminates these redundancies, offering an incremental recognition system that acknowledges progress at each stage. And of course, our platform also supports compliance, as I mentioned earlier, future planning, and reporting to frameworks like SBTi, GRI, and is even recognized by GRESB. GNFC certification is also unique because it addresses all three scopes. And because we follow the guidelines in the GHG protocol, our certifications more accurately account for embodied emissions. Our design certification assesses embodied emissions from building materials, while our construction certification assesses embodied emissions from building materials, processes and emissions due to electricity, fuel, and much more consumed exclusively during the construction process. So we are constantly reminding the projects in their journey of how to think about their carbon emissions and how it affects their current and future operations. As simple as that. And of course, and our operations certification assesses embodied emissions from building materials or equipment used during major retrofitting or end of life replacement during the baseline year considered. So you can see that there is this common thread, which is all about data, all about tracking, and most importantly, really baselining your performance. I've said this very often: what gets measured gets done, what gets done gets improved, what gets improved gets replicated, and then eventually that you use it to scale it up. Now, I will jump onto a very interesting case study, particularly from the Latin American region. Grupo Schifani, who had already achieved LEED Platinum, was able to net zero certify their headquarters in Querétaro, Mexico, to net zero last year with support from TREE, a leading Mexican environmental consulting firm, and the GNFC team. For those of you not familiar with Grupo Schifani, they are a pioneering construction company. From October 2022 to 2023, Grupo Schifani conducted their GHG emissions assessment, which helped them acknowledge their baseline and identify where they needed to go with their reduction strategies. The assessment revealed Scope 1 challenges in stationary combustion, Scope 2 hurdles in purchased energy, and an uphill battle, like most of the businesses do, with Scope 3, with emissions for management of company vehicles, employee commutes, and air travel of those coming to and from the headquarters. Grupo Schifani used a combination of emission reduction strategies and carbon credits to certify. We are not against offsets. We even encourage offsets and carbon credits because we believe today where we are, we need that to get there. But eventually, I'm sure all projects will reduce those carbon credits and carbon offsets. So for Scope 1, Grupo Schifani performed regular inspections and tracking of refrigerant leaks to ensure leakage rates remain below 3%. They also improved equipment usage and began implementing energy efficient practices via educational workshops for personnel. So it's all about training. For Scope 2, they installed solar panels to ensure 100% of energy consumption is sourced from renewable energy. In addition to employing software tools such as Sunwise for tracking and optimizing solar energy generation and consumption in real time, the company also upgraded to LED lighting fixtures and implemented advanced lighting control systems. Grupo Schifani prioritized the reduction of Scope 3 emissions by promoting work from home policies, implementing carpool programs, and renovating facilities to support sustainable commuting. Additionally, they purchased carbon offsets for flights and optimized travel requirements to reduce unnecessary trips. Other Scope 3 reduction strategies include conducting waste audits and diverting up to 40% of waste for recycling, the encouragement of partners and suppliers to adopt sustainable practices to reduce overall supply chain emissions, and the transition to hybrid or high efficiency vehicles when renewing the vehicle fleet. As part of their plan, Grupo Schifani also employed carbon credits to close the gap and achieve certification. But their plan is to reduce their dependence on these year over year to meet the requirements of GNFC certification. Now, this is a perfect case study in my mind because this is a type of case study that will resonate with most of your projects, will resonate deeply with you because you've dealt with it day in, day out. And this is why we believe this can horizontally scale and as well as vertically deliver value to the market. So the comprehensive net zero data monitoring plan in place for Grupo Schifani's headquarters has targets for 7 categories, including solar energy use, commuting emissions, air travel emissions, HVAC efficiency, waste diversion, lighting and energy use, and overall emissions. Of course, progress in the region is thanks to strong localized leadership, which is you. This is why we are proud to partner with both the Chile and Peru GBCs and in talks with others to expand collaboration. Additionally, we are working to expand our multifaceted vision with a variety of leaders and companies across the region. In Brazil, for example, our partner is OTEC, who's already helping LFRV, Sociedade de Advogados. Sorry, my pronunciation is wrong. If the pronunciation is wrong, because the country's first GNFC certified project. So look for that case study and that announcement to come over here. And we are also working with extensive amount of GNFC advisors across the region, including our dear Alicia Silva, Cesar Ulises, of course, Trevino, Luz Salinas, of course, our fearless leader from Chile, Maria Fernanda Aguirre. And of course, I want to invite many of you on this call to come and partner with us, support us, so that we can lead the way to a net zero future for our children. With that, I'd like to introduce our dear friend Hector Miranda Plaza to share his own personal insights on how Peru and Latin America can put net zero within reach. I have known Hector for years and had the pleasure of collaborating closely with him during my time at USGBC and his time leading GBC Peru to deliver many accomplishments, including the first lead lab course in Latin America. We were just remembering fondly about our meeting there and our co-presentation there while unraveling the lead lab in Catholic University in Peru. Now by partnering with this current organization, Regenerativa, and working with him as a GNFC advisor, I'm thrilled to partner with him once again to help to deliver the market transformation in Peru and greater South American region to achieve the singular goal of getting to zero. Hector's impact over the years on sustainability and the built environment in Latin America have been truly remarkable. This is why he has led and participated in more than 200 LEED certified projects and has delivered trusted and sought after education and training to future generations of LEED and sustainability professionals. I am confident that Hector will deliver immense value to our network, bringing GNFC to new clients and partners in the Latin American market in collaboration with you and further strengthening our certification platform and offerings. Let us not forget, it is time to get to zero as soon as we can so that we can actually deliver a zero emissions future to our children's children and deliver a positive impact on this people, planet, and profit. Thank you so much for your time and listening to me. Hector, to you.
Muy afortunado el compartir este espacio con un verdadero amigo y mentor profesional, el señor Mahesh Ramanujan, con quien tengo el privilegio de compartir una relación profesional y de profunda amistad de muchos años. Soy Héctor Miranda y soy director ejecutivo de Regenerativa. Tengo el privilegio de ser asesor para Latinoamérica del Global Network for Zero. Durante los últimos 20 años he dedicado mi vida a impulsar la transformación sostenible de entornos urbanos y edificios, liderando procesos operativos de descarbonización en los sectores público y privado, con un objetivo claro: acercar nuestras ciudades a las cero emisiones. La experiencia que hemos adquirido en las 2 últimas décadas y la pasión que ponemos en nuestro trabajo nos han permitido mantenernos siempre a la vanguardia, ofreciendo resultados tangibles e impactantes. Sin embargo, a pesar de los muchos logros alcanzados, debo confesarles que a menudo sentía que faltaba algo. El no lograr alcanzar las cero emisiones en mis proyectos mantenía en mí una persistente sensación de que no habíamos ido lo suficientemente lejos, que me faltaba algo para. ¿Qué es lo que debo hacer? Pero el día de hoy, y con absoluta seguridad, tengo que decirles que he encontrado la pieza que faltaba. Una herramienta concreta, poderosa y transformadora que me permite guiar a mis clientes hacia la neutralidad de carbono, la certificación Net Zero de GNFZ. Por eso hoy no estoy aquí solo para hablar de sostenibilidad. Estoy aquí para mostrarles cómo la estamos logrando. Juntos recorreremos un camino que comienza con mejores operativas y conduce a la certificación Net Zero completa. Así pues, con gran entusiasmo, los invito a descubrir lo que hemos construido para ustedes, un ecosistema real, probado y listo para apoyarlos en su camino hacia las cero emisiones. El mayor obstáculo para lograr el net zero No es técnico ni financiero. Es una idea equivocada. Existe la creencia arraigada de que transformar un edificio existente e insostenible en uno de cero emisiones netas es simplemente imposible, porque asumimos que sería demasiado costoso y así, sin darnos cuenta, descartamos la idea. La eliminamos de nuestra lista de prioridades. Nos quedamos con el deseo de actuar, pero permanecemos atrapados en esa zona gris de la inacción. Hoy te invito a liberarte de esa mentalidad, a eliminar cualquier concepto que limite tu potencial, porque alcanzar las cero emisiones no es un sueño lejano, está a tu alcance. Y lo más importante es la decisión que has estado esperando tomar algún día. Ese día es hoy. Salgamos de la zona gris con la confianza de que el objetivo de cero emisiones netas no solo es alcanzable, sino inevitable. A lo largo de nuestros años de experiencia en el trabajo, en el día a día, hemos observado un patrón recurrente. La mayoría de las instituciones y empresas tienen objetivos. Muchas cuentan con equipos motivados. Algunas incluso cuentan con los recursos necesarios, pero no están avanzando al ritmo que deberían. Entonces, ¿qué las detiene? ¿Por qué se demoran? ¿Dónde está el eslabón perdido? Y la razón es más simple de lo que parece. Carecen de estructura, carecen de una metodología clara para convertir las buenas intenciones en resultados tangibles. Y eso es precisamente lo que venimos a ofrecerles hoy. Un puente para cerrar esa brecha, una hoja de ruta concreta, viable y validada internacionalmente que los guíe paso a paso hacia las cero emisiones, con credibilidad, eficiencia y un apoyo confiable. La alianza entre Regenerativa y Global Network for Zero nació como la respuesta más clara y contundente al reto de las cero emisiones. Combina el marco global de la certificación de Global Network for Zero con la experiencia regional, el conocimiento local y la capacidad de ejecución práctica de Regenerativa. Esta alianza no solo hace que el viaje sea más fácil, sino que amplía el alcance real de net cero en nuestra región. Ahora, imagina la tranquilidad de saber que tu organización está en las mejores manos para lograr su objetivo. Porque no importa dónde empiece, no exigimos prerequisitos ni imponemos condiciones rígidas. Simplemente ofrecemos la confianza y la certeza de estar con los mejores. Una alianza que convierte la visión en acción y la acción en resultados reales y medibles. Somos el socio que lidera tu transición a las cero emisiones netas. En Regenerativa no competimos, nos diferenciamos. Somos el único ecosistema en América Latina que ofrece un camino seguro, medible y certificado hacia las cero emisiones, respaldado por los estándares más rigurosos del mundo, como Global Network for Zero, GRESB y LEED. Apoyamos a inversionistas, universidades y empresas inmobiliarias en la transformación de sus activos en líderes ESG, mejorando su valor, rendimiento y reputación, sin aumentar los costos operativos. Conectamos métricas, visión y propósito. Diagnosticamos, optimizamos y alineamos portafolios, campus y edificios mediante estrategias integradas que combinan sostenibilidad y rendimiento financiero. Esto no es una consultoría, Es liderazgo técnico con credibilidad internacional. Y tu camino directo hacia el cero neto ya empieza ahora. En Regenerativa hemos diseñado un ecosistema estratégico para acelerar la transición hacia las cero emisiones. Un modelo que integra análisis, mejora operativa, estrategia ESG y verificación climática. Todo comienza con una base técnica sólida. La implementación de la certificación LEED, operaciones y mantenimiento, y WELL, enfocada en la eficiencia, la salud y el rendimiento de los edificios. A partir de esa base activamos nuestra metodología exclusiva, el portafolio verde, diseñado para escalar la transformación en múltiples activos en simultáneo. Con esta evolución en marcha, elevamos el proceso a través de la evaluación GRESP, que alinea los indicadores ESG y proyecta el progreso a nivel institucional y de cartera para abrirnos paso hacia las cero emisiones. Finalmente, validamos el real cumplimiento de los compromisos climáticos a través de la certificación Net Zero por parte de la Red Global para las Cero Emisiones. Cada etapa potencia la siguiente, pero lo más importante es que son modulares e independientes. Puedes empezar por el punto que mejor se adapte a tu contexto actual y avanzar con claridad hacia un futuro de cero emisiones. Y durante todo el proceso, nos aseguramos de que tengas dos aspectos clave: claridad total y control total. Porque la transición a las cero emisiones nunca debería ser confusa, debería ser tu decisión estratégica más inteligente. El verdadero rendimiento empieza desde adentro. En Regenerativa iniciamos el camino hacia el cero neto, garantizando que cada edificio funcione con los más altos estándares técnicos y humanos. Aplicamos marcos reconocidos internacionalmente como LEED para operaciones y mantenimiento y WELL, ambas para optimizar el uso de energía, mejorar la eficiencia del mantenimiento y garantizar espacios saludables para las personas que los ocupan. Estas certificaciones generan datos reales, comparables y prácticos. No se trata solo de cumplimiento normativo, sino de gestionar con inteligencia, anticipar riesgos y generar confianza a través de las operaciones. Un edificio certificado no solo es más eficiente, es una declaración de compromiso y el punto de partida para todo lo que viene después. Transformación a escala, impacto multiplicado. Cuando múltiples activos avanzan bajo una estrategia unificada, el resultado no es lineal, sino exponencial. El portafolio verde es nuestra metodología exclusiva para intervenir simultáneamente en múltiples edificios, reduciendo costos unitarios, acelerando los plazos de entrega y generando sinergia operativa con beneficios inmediatos. Pasamos de gestionar edificios aislados a gestionar un sistema coordinado, donde cada activo se alinea con estándares ambientales, de eficiencia y gobernanza, creando trazabilidad, coherencia y reputación institucional. La sostenibilidad deja de ser un esfuerzo aislado y se convierte en una política de todo el portafolio, estructurada, medible y con resultados visibles desde el primer año. Del rendimiento técnico al reconocimiento estratégico. Una vez optimizada la cartera, es hora de demostrarla con claridad y credibilidad al mercado. GRESP es el estándar internacional más reconocido para evaluar el desempeño ESG en activos inmobiliarios. No solo mide el estado actual de los edificios y sus impactos ambientales, sociales y de gobernanza, sino que también posiciona a las organizaciones ante inversionistas, fondos y partes interesadas que exigen evidencia, no intenciones. Mediante una metodología rigurosa, trazable y comparativa, GRESC convierte los datos técnicos en reputación corporativa. Es la herramienta que conecta la gestión interna con las expectativas globales, ayudando a identificar brechas, oportunidades y fortalezas en la estrategia ESG de cada cartera. Con GRESC, los resultados dejan de ser internos y se convierten en valor proyectado. El futuro ya no es una promesa, sino un resultado alcanzado. Tras optimizar las operaciones, transformar la cartera y optimizar el desempeño ESG, damos el paso final: certificar la neutralidad climática según el estándar más riguroso y confiable del mundo, la certificación Net Zero de la Red Global para el Zero Net. Verifica de forma independiente y transparente que una organización ha completado los 5 pasos fundamentales para alcanzar cero emisiones operativas. En un marco alineado con la ciencia del clima, el protocolo de gases de efecto invernadero y las expectativas internacionales más exigentes, con GNFZ los datos ya no son internos. Las acciones se convierten en evidencia y la sostenibilidad se convierte en legado. No se trata solo de reducir las emisiones, se trata de asumir el liderazgo con convicción, demostrarlo con rigor y proyectarlo con orgullo. Resultados comprobados con asociaciones reales para una transformación duradera. Desde universidades hasta corporaciones, desde edificios públicos hasta iniciativas académicas. Regenerativa ha liderado algunas de las transformaciones de sostenibilidad más representativas de la región. Un ejemplo pequeño: en la Pontificia Universidad Católica del Perú, apoyamos durante una década una evolución hacia un campus de cero, convirtiéndolo en el primer campus universitario sostenible del país. Estos logros no son el resultado de esfuerzos aislados, sino el resultado de una visión sistémica y técnica, profundamente alineada con los objetivos climáticos globales. Cada caso demuestra que alcanzar el cero neto no es un ideal lejano, es una realidad tangible cuando se combinan liderazgo, estrategia y asesoramiento experto. Liderar el cambio no es una ventaja, es un deber con visión. Al trabajar con Regenerativa y Global Network for Zero, las organizaciones no solo optimizan sus operaciones o mejoran su posicionamiento institucional, sino que se alinean con el tipo de liderazgo que el mundo necesita. Alcanzar las cero emisiones no se trata solo de reducir las emisiones, se trata de demostrar que la organización comprende su papel en la transición global, responde a las expectativas de las partes interesadas con acciones y toma decisiones a largo plazo, no por moda, sino por convicción. Este camino genera confianza, anticipa regulaciones, protege el valor reputacional y genera una narrativa poderosa. La historia de una organización que no espera que llegue el futuro, sino que lo construye con responsabilidad, claridad y propósito. Esta solución es para todos aquellos que saben que el futuro no es algo que se espera, es algo que se construye. Para universidades que desean dejar un legado inspirador, no solo con palabras, sino con acciones concretas. Para gobiernos que entienden que el liderazgo empieza con el ejemplo, acciones audaces conducen a una transformación duradera para fondos de inversión que buscan más que informes, buscan evidencia, consistencia y resultados que respalden su visión ESG. Y para empresas que han ido más allá del cumplimiento normativo básico y están listas para liderar sus sectores con impacto, innovación y propósito. No importa dónde empieces, lo que importa es a dónde quieres llegar. Si tu organización está lista para ser parte del cambio, con visión, convicción y resultados medibles, este es el lugar correcto, porque este camino está diseñado para guiarlo y demostrarle que es posible liderar con propósito. Sabemos lo que está pensando, cuánto costará, cuánto tiempo llevará, qué tan complejo será y por dónde empiezo. Y la respuesta es clara. No estás solo en este viaje. Nuestro trabajo comienza ahí mismo, ayudándote a aclarar cada una de esas dudas con un enfoque personalizado, viable y realista. Porque transformar su organización hacia el net cero no se trata de tener todas las respuestas hoy. Se trata de contar con la orientación adecuada, una que los guíe paso a paso, con claridad, estrategia y resultados concretos. Ha llegado el momento de decidir. Hoy la verdadera pregunta no es si debemos actuar, eso ya se ha respondido. La verdadera pregunta es, ¿con quién lo harás? Si buscan un socio que combine una visión global con una ejecución local, que convierta los compromisos en logros mesurables y que lidere con conocimiento, estrategia y propósito, entonces ya lo has encontrado, porque el futuro ya no es una hipótesis, ya ha comenzado y en esta nueva era solo hay dos lugares donde estar, liderándola o viéndola pasar. Con esto llegamos al final de mi presentación y como hemos visto, cada estándar es una pieza del rompecabezas. LEED nos dio la base, WELL la humanidad, GRESP la estrategia y Global Network for Zero el destino. Ya no se trata de adaptarse al futuro, se trata de construirlo desde ahora. Muchísimas gracias por vuestra atención y quedo atento a cualquier pregunta. Thank you very much, Mahesh. Now I give the pass to Sri.
Thank you so much, Hector. And hello, everyone. Let me go ahead and share my screen now. Great. I hope my screen is visible. So what I'm going to do today is I'll walk you through our Net Zero certification platform that will help you in the certification journey. And basically, this what you see on your screen right now is the interface where you log into our platform. If you're a first-time user, you can go ahead and sign up right here. It's a very simple sign-up process, but I'm going to be going ahead and signing in here. And what you will see is basically a whole list of projects that I've already been working on. But when you are a first-time user, this is what you will see. It will ask you what is the net zero certification that you're looking to pursue. And like it was mentioned earlier today, we launched for the buildings sector. And I will be walking you through the platform that will help with the certification for an existing building or a building that's in operations. And for ACE of today's demo, there's data that I have filled in for two projects. So I will start by walking you through the Alpha Tower 3310. What you see here as soon as you start a project is what we call the overview tab. This is basically where you can take control of your project for its submissions, for the third-party reviews and certification. We'll come back to this in a while, and start instead with the basic info. As the name suggests, this is where you provide the basic information about your project. You can basically tell us what is the space title. You can mention the occupancy category of your building. So this occupancy category is available as a whole drop-down list, but you also have the opportunity to type and tag it as well. You can then go on to tell us what is the target certification area, geolocate your project. And what's interesting here in the interface is this particular question, which will ask you if this building is a part of. So let's say that the project that you're working on is not a standalone building, but rather an asset that belongs to a larger portfolio, or maybe it's a building that belongs to a larger campus or an organization. Then you have the opportunity to tag this particular building to the larger entity that we're talking about. And that's what I have done here. You can then go on to tell us if you'd like to keep your project certification confidential and also upload photographs and videos of your project. The next part is where you onboard all of your team that's going to be helping in this decarbonization journey. This could be anyone and everyone, right from your consulting partner, the sustainability in-house team, your facility management team, HVAC, MEP consultants, and everybody who's going to help in decarbonization. Moving on to the next tab, which is the assessment. This is the most critical part of the net zero certification journey. And as was mentioned earlier, our program is based on the GHG protocol, which is going to help you calculate your emissions under scope 1, 2, and 3. You would ideally be starting your assessment by mentioning the reporting period. This we suggest to be 12 consecutive months to ensure we take into account all the changes that happens in operations because of the seasons. Now you have the opportunity to report multiple years. And for this project, you can see that there's data for about 5 different years. And you also have the flexibility to choose your own baseline. Moving on to the assessment, let's look at scope 1. And you will see that there are 3 questions here. The first one is on fuel consumption. The second question is on refrigerant fugitives. And the third question is on mobile combustions. We'll start with the first one here. You will ideally be starting with an empty row. And clicking under the fuels, you'll see there's a whole drop-down list that consists of solid, liquid, gaseous, and biofuels as well. So I'm just going to go pick one here. The minute I've picked a fuel, you can see that there's an emission factor that appears from our database. And all that you will now be required to enter is the consumption. And there you have your emissions calculated immediately. Now, the emission factors in our database are from reputed sources such as US EPA, DEFRA, IPCC's Assessment Report 6, and any region-specific emission factors that are publicly available. But let's say for your project, there's a more market-specific emission factor that you have. Then the platform offers you the flexibility to edit this emission factor. Let's do that. Now, the minute I've edited the emission factor, you can see that there is an icon that appears, and hovering over this, it will give you the default value from our database, and you can always compare it with the more market-specific emission factor that you have entered. We can look at one more. Let's take refrigerant fugitives here. Again, you would be starting with an empty row. Clicking under the type of refrigerant, you can see that there is a whole drop-down list that appears. Let's pick one. And the emission factor appears immediately from our database. And I'm just going to enter the consumption. There you have your emissions computed immediately. So this is how all of our calculations work. That was scope 1. Moving on to scope 2, this is where you will account for all of the energy that the particular building has consumed during its reporting period. This is where you will basically account for the non-renewable electricity that you've purchased from the grid. If there has been any renewable energy generation on site, you can include that. At the same time, if there has been any renewable energy that you're procuring from an offsite source, that gets included as well under scope 2. Moving on to scope 3, this is where it gets a little more interesting because there are multiple categories under which you can capture data. And depending on the typology of the project, you can capture data under scope 3. So here again, you can see for this particular building, this was a commercial office tower. You can see that there is some data made available under waste disposal. This waste disposal is basically the waste that has been sent to the landfill. Then, of course, you can see some data against waste that has been incinerated, and also some data made available under employee commute. So this was scope 3. Now, at the end of this, you can see a summary of your scope emissions. This is basically a summation of your scope 1, 2, and 3. Moving on from there, you can go on to tell us if there are any best practices or standards that you are looking to implement in your project. This again, of course, is available as a whole drop-down. But like I said, feel free to type and tag as well. You can then provide all of the documents that will help substantiate the data that you have provided in the assessment. This would include documents as simple as your bills and invoices. Moving on from here, the next tab is net zero plan. And what's happened now is we've already completed the assessment. We've set a baseline. We know where the project stands in terms of its emissions, and it's going to be very critical to prepare a decarbonization strategy for the particular project. This is where there's a collaboration that happens between the project team and the consulting partner, and you basically prepare a narrative document that will talk about the various decarbonization strategies you'll be implementing to get your project to net zero, the timeline by when you want to get your project to net zero. And of course, if at some point you're looking to purchase carbon offsets to maybe address your residual emissions, all of that gets included, and the same net zero plan can be uploaded right here. The next tab is your carbon offset, where, like I mentioned earlier, if you are purchasing carbon offsets at some point, you can come back and report that purchase here by mentioning what was your planned purchase of carbon offsets, what is the actual purchase that has occurred, and of course, a cumulative of the actual purchase is taken into account for the final calculation. The next tab is net zero milestones. So what's basically happened is you've strategized your roadmap, and you're now going to be implementing these strategies on site. This basically means annually we could be looking at reductions in emissions by various percentages. So you can come back and report that reduction in your emissions right here by mentioning what is the planned reduction of emissions, what is the actual reduction that has happened after the implementation of strategies, and of course, a cumulative of the actual reduction is taken into account for the final calculation. The next tab here is a summary of emissions. So the numbers that you see here are all from your assessment up until your net zero milestones. So again, you would see your scope 1, 2, and 3 and a summation of that. This is basically the numbers from your baseline. And then, of course, if there have been any carbon offset purchases, that gets accounted for. If there has been a reduction in your emissions through the implementation of strategies, that gets accounted for as well. And the final number that you see is now the emissions that the project has to avoid to get to net zero. This summary of emissions you can download as a spreadsheet or a PDF. It's also readily available as a link that can be copied and shared within your team. The final tab here is project files, where all your documents and the photographs that you're uploading in the various tabs gets centrally located here for easy access. Now, let's go back to the overview tab. And what you can see here is I've already said we have completed the building information, we've completed the team information. And now that we've completed the assessment, I'm going to go ahead and submit this for a review. Now, the minute I click next, there would be a payment gateway that will open, following which you'll be able to submit your project for a third-party validation. I will also walk you through a project that's already gone through the validation process. So here you can see this is Alpha Office 1110. And from the overview tab, you can see that the project has already achieved 2 certificates, namely the assessment and the net zero plan. So what happens is the minute you submit your project for a review, there's an independent third-party reviewer who's brought on board, and there's a very transparent interaction that will happen between the project team and the reviewer. And all of this gets documented right here under the comments. So here you can see that there have been some queries raised, some documents exchanged for addressing these queries. At the end of this, when all queries have been addressed, the reviewer would then recommend the project for a certificate, at which point GNFZ will approve the certificate and it will be made available right here at the Overview tab. That brings me to the end of my demonstration.
Hi, Saranjani. We got one question from the chat about the demo, so I just wanted to see if you could speak to that. But the question was, is it possible to change the default emissions factor database? The person who asked it is evaluating a project in Mexico, and the current default values are based on the UK government data. Can we automatically use emissions factors from EPA instead?
So you will be able to edit the emission factors individually for whatever are the categories that you are capturing data for. That flexibility is available on our platform.
Yes, and yes, you can change the default database. Sriranjani, we should make a note of it. That's a great suggestion. We could discuss that.
Yes.
But my short answer is yes.
And then the next question that we got was whether or not a project needed to be LEED or well certified or have another previous green building certification to go through the certification. And the answer is no. There are no prerequisites to achieve GNFZ certification. We are currently working with clients who have achieved a previous green building certification who are looking to layer GNFZ on top to take that next step and achieve net zero, but we were also working with projects that have never achieved another green building program in the past who are looking to use GNFZ certification to create a roadmap to get there. And so our strategy and the way that the certification was designed is to kind of appeal to the top and bottom of the market to kind of close that gap to zero to make sure that everyone has a solution that can work for them to kind of achieve and pursue certification. And Mahesh, I don't know if you have anything else to add there.
No, I think you covered it good. It is 0 to 0 strategy. That means if you have nothing, you can get started, because our goal is to eliminate every barrier that a project will face during its net zero journey. So which means that putting a requirement that you have to be green building certified or this or that makes it difficult. Definitely these things help you get closer to zero, but it is not required because the green building system technically is a multi-dimensional attribute. We are trying to focus on a single attribute called zero, which is zero emissions, zero energy, zero water, and zero waste. So our approach is pretty straightforward and linear, and we are asking you to start from where you are and get to the biggest goal that you can achieve, which is zero.
The next question is, will there be any kind of training for consultants, or is that required to be a GNFZ consulting partner?
I will take that answer, Sarah. There is no requirement for you don't need to pass any training or any class or anything to become a GNFZ consulting partner. I think definitely we want you to be aware of the program, aware of the protocol, learn it so that you can actually do better implementation and actually teach and help other people understand. But it is not a prerequisite or it's not a requirement. So we are happy to engage with you directly to see what we can work, how we can work together. But we don't have any conditions. Our goal is no rules. Keep it simple, keep it flexible. But the only rule is that all of us must have a plan to get to net zero, and we should continue to work towards it. Any other things, Sarah?
I think those were the only questions that came in. So
Hector, do you want to add any comments or anything as a closeout so that we from my end, we are open to support you. From our side, there are 3 asks. If you have a project that you already are working on, please bring that project for us to collaborate with you on. We would love to do a case study with you. We can try it the best way that we have seen with all our consulting partners. They brought a project, they were able to verify, and they were just pleasantly surprised how smooth and easy this could be. And you already saw it. Even the platform is like, it's as simple as it could be. And we plan to keep it simple and useful. The second part is that, of course, education is very, very important. Awareness is important. So we are happy to even take the case studies that you've already worked on and present it to other people, because this is a network of sharing. So we have to share our knowledge. We have to share our educational resources. And we are happy to continue to facilitate the dialogue amongst all of you, including talking with you and you talking with us. And last but not the least is that I think language in Latin America is very important. So we're happy to collaborate with you to make sure that this platform is as close and as local and as personal to our Latin American audience. For example, there was an excellent suggestion given about how we can default the emission database. So maybe in the US it's EPA, maybe in Latin America you can choose between UK and UPA. It is your choice, and that is something that we can easily facilitate from our point of view, but we need to know what works and what doesn't work for you. What are the things that you like to uniquely address within your projects, so that we can get your projects to be celebrated in the marketplace? Because our strategy is simple: educate, implement, celebrate. And a sign of great implementation is celebration, and that celebration is certification. So that's what I want to leave you with today. And Hector, please feel free to add anything that you think is important.
Thank you, Mahesh. I just want to say this in Spanish. La oportunidad para llegar a las 0 emisiones no necesita ningún prerequisito. No necesita tener LEED, ni WELL, ni GRESS. Lo único que se necesita es una decisión para ir de 0 a 0 emisiones. El camino es mucho más sencillo, pero todo suma. Si hay edificios que tienen alguna certificación, pues bienvenidos. Pero no se limita ni se restringe. La opción está abierta para todos, no solamente edificios, sino también negocios. Que el llegar a net cero es una responsabilidad de todos los que estamos en la sociedad. Agradezco su presencia esta mañana y a todo el equipo fabuloso que Mahesh tiene en Global Network for Zero. Ha sido un honor estar con ustedes y siempre atento para servirlos en cualquier eventualidad. Gracias, muchas gracias.
Thank you, Hector. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.